All right, so we are live. Welcome to our Braid Girls today. Everybody out there, today we have Stephanie from JS Farms 2004, and I think you just did a collaboration with Doug and Stacy, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I went up to visit them. We only live an hour away from each other, so it was kind of overdue. We've known each other for a while, so or on YouTube, but it's kind of been long overdue. I just been so busy, but I went up there and butchered chickens with them, and she taught me some fun fermenting stuff. So.
And did you guys both make videos of it, or?
No, just they did. I just went up there to have some fun. So.
I bet it was
fun.
But
I did mention them in a video that I posted this morning, so people can go over there and check out their channel too if they've never been over there before. So.
Good deal. I think that is so exciting when you're close enough to go and actually, it's so different when it's in person rather than just on video.
I know.
So Stephanie and I were visiting just before we got on because, and so this is a sidebar. We are going to talk about farming burnout, but first we're going to talk about this. I just sold Empress, who is one of the most prolific goats that I've ever owned. She's a good goat, and I got a really fair price for her. I charged what she was worth for not only the fact that she's a heavy milker. She gives 1.5 gallons a day, but also because I have 1.5 years of training into her, which means that in the milk stanchion, she wouldn't lift her leg. It would never be a situation where she would never stick her foot in a bucket because she'd been trained. And I put her up at what would be considered a very high price in our area because of that. I had the time into her and I had the breeding into her. And I was aiming for her to be bought by a dairy because most people in the area that would be looking for a milk goat would be new milkers. And because of how much milk she gave, I was a little bit scared that if I sold her to somebody that was a new milker, that their hands would get sore, that they'd get frustrated, and that she would lose her training. And so we were talking about really what happens, what the relationship is between you and your milk animal and the kind of time you have to put in for, what do you think, Stephanie? What's the relationship between a milking animal and the milker?
You really have to trust one another. You know, when you get a new milker, they're used to somebody else's ways of doing it. And sometimes they don't like things new. When I first got my my dairy cow, I had sore hands, and nobody, I was really kind of, I went in, I did my research, but I went into it, thinking I could, hand milk her and all this, and it was very difficult. But eventually my hands did, get to the point where they could milk her the entire way. But building a trust and relationship with that animal is really key. I've got some first-time freshener goats this year. And when they were little, I played with their udder. I got them used to standing still for me. And training is really kind of instrumental in the behavior of a goat. If they're started right, they can be really good for a long time. I think half of it's training yourself and half of it's, the animal. So
I agree. And a lot of people, I think they don't recognize, okay, so when you're nursing a baby, you have your baby. There's very few people that are allowed to touch that region of your body. And for one thing, it's a sensitive area, it's a delicate area, and it's an emotional area. And so for a goat, I have friends that are very good at milking goats, but they have to come and introduce themselves to my goat in order for her to feel terribly comfortable with somebody coming. I mean, if you're an experienced milker, it's definitely easier. But for any animal, if you've seen another baby try and come and nurse on a goat that's not her mother, that goat will knock her 3 ways to Tuesday. And once a goat or any milk animal attaches to you, you become to some degree their baby. And they at times think of you as their mother because you feed them and they feed you. And it's a very complicated relationship. And that's literally what it is. It is a relationship. And without the relationship, the milk might taste sour. You might get really frustrated because she won't let her milk down. And I think that's why it's important to get really high quality animals and to really know what you're going, like for me, I prefer an animal that doesn't milk as much because I prefer not to have sore hands by the time I'm done milking. I'd rather, but I'd rather have a goat that gives high enough production that I only have to milk one goat at a time. So it's such a system. Okay, so we're going to move on and we're going to talk about burnout. Stephanie's farm is bigger than mine. She has a lot more income coming in from her farm, and so we're going to talk about how it is that you run your farm without getting burnt out, without throwing your hands up in the air and walking away from it and saying it's not worth it. And so what do you think, Stephanie? What's your first top trick for that?
Well, first of all, you got to really love what you're doing, and you really need to go into it. If you've never done it before, you really need to go into it educated. Because it's hard. There's nothing really glorious about it. It kind of seems that way sometimes, but it's a lot of hard work. And the first thing I would probably say is you probably want to write down why you want to do it and have it physically in front of you. So when you get to that day when you're like, why did I do this? That way you can go back and see, you know, okay, yeah, that's why I wanted to do this. Just hang in there. It'll get better. You know, there's been days where I've, you know, wanted to throw in the towel. One that comes to mind is I AI'd one of my cows to this really, really nice bull. And she's a really nice, well, she was second, she was a, so be her second calf. And I watched her, you know, kept an eye on her. During calving season, I'm out there almost all the time. I'm sure my cows get sick of seeing me. But I go out there and I find a beautiful heifer calf dead.
Oh, no. That's the worst.
And I cried because this cow, I was so excited. And this was going to be a really, really nice heifer. And I spent all this money to have her AI'd. And what ended up happening was in the back of the property, she had it back there. She picked a really good spot, but there happened to be a water puddle. And I guess the new calf stumbled into it and she drowned in that maybe 12 inches of water. She just drowned. I was just literally heartbroken. So losing babies is one of the hardest things, I think. And then you have so much time and effort invested in something, you know, it's kind of hard. But, you know, I always try to look at my failures as a learning experience. And that's kind of how you have to do it, because if you focus on all your failures, you're never going to want to do it anymore. So, yeah.
Well, and doesn't it seem like, here's the way that I look at it, is there are certain things that happen that are extremely emotional. I have a friend that, in fact, they're the ones that bred all of our dairy goats. They're amazing herd. And they'd had a setback in which a dog had come in and killed a bunch of their dairy goats, and the guy shot the dog. I mean, the dog had come in and just ravaged their goats. They mutilated them and killed some, and so he shot the dog. And the owner of the dog came back and threw a Molotov cocktail into their barn and burned their barn with all their goats to the ground. And so they had all these years that they put into these extremely expensive $1,500 a goat type animals. And his wife still does goats, but he had been the primary breeder when they first started. And after this loss, he just couldn't do it anymore. And we had that happen last year when Cloud died, that I had come out to the field and I have them on a rope, and I've never ever had a problem with the goat strangling themselves, ever. They're so smart that if they get stuck on something, they'll just stand there and they'll wait. A sheep will strangle themselves, but a goat, they'll just wait for you. And I'd had them away from anything that could have hurt them. And I came out, and what had happened was that the neighbor's dog had come in and chased her, and she'd hit the end of her rope, and it had flipped her, and then she probably would have been fine, except that she flipped next to an irrigation ditch, and she couldn't get herself back out. And you have so much emotion invested into these animals that kind of loss for me was devastating. It took me 6 months. I had a 6-month depression, and a lot of people would look at that and be like, "It's just a goat," and it's like,
it's not just a goat. They become part of your family. They really do.
They do. And especially one that you have that kind of time and breeding and relationship with. And it took 6 months. And even now, sometimes I wonder if it's worth to have farm animals that you get so attached to, because it can turn you off to the farming if they suffer or if something goes wrong with them. And so this is the second part that I want to talk about is, when is it that you make the investments on your farm that make it easier on you, safer for the animals? And do you think there's a point where you go into a little bit of debt in order to streamline things so that physically and emotionally you can stand to keep going?
Well, you probably always want to start out small. Like you always recommend, just start out with some chickens or something like that. But as you get older, or as you build your infrastructure and things like that, you can start replacing the little chicken coop that you built in the beginning that's probably about ready to fall in at that point anyway. Upgrade it to something that's going to last you a really long time, that you can spend money on, and make it to where as you get older, things are easier. I know you talked about permaculture a lot on your channel. That to me is really great, because it does make it easier on you, because they do get established as it goes on. With the animals, building that relationship with them. You have the older animals. To me, they're easier to take care of than the younger ones, because they've got a lot of learning to do. Like right now, we've got some we're having to keep up in a pen right now, because we had a round of pink eye come through, and it's really bad in the calves, and we've been doctoring them. We're going to put eye patches on them, and then we can send them back out with their mamas. But just investing in good equipment as you go along is probably really helpful for you. You can start out with something that you made yourself that works, and then move on to something that's better, as you go along. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going into debt to do it, but if you have to, and say you have to buy the chicken shed and then you pay it off over so long, that wouldn't be so bad either. So.
I'm going to grab my knitting needles really quick. I sat down and now I have nothing to do with my hands, and I'm getting fidgety, I'm afraid. I'm loving the conversation, but I need something to do with my hands. My take on all of this has changed a lot over the years. When I first started doing the homesteading and stuff like that, everything had to be cash, and everything had to be generally repurposed or super, super cheap. And I really believe that is how you start, because it is so expensive to figure out how your systems are going to work. And if you put in a brand new system at the beginning, there's a really good chance it won't work at all. It won't work at all, because you're going off with somebody else's property you heard about, not your property. And I found, and I don't know if it's just because my property was so horrible, everything I did for the first 4 years failed. Everything. And if it wasn't blood, sweat, and tears on my part, nothing survived. And I don't think that every homestead starts out that way. I think that most homesteads, you start out having some successes and some failures. but ours started out and it was just, it was just so terrible because everything died. And I honestly, things were so bad when we first started out. Our well went dry because I was watering trees with our well. And the same year when we were flood irrigating, we flood irrigated over the top of our drain field, which flooded our septic up into our house. So we had a dry well and a full septic system. And we did that twice in the same year as this huge learning curve. And my dad sold their farm at the same time that we were doing this, and he had a lot of free stuff that I tried. And then, but this is the thing that I feel personally, this is my, and it deviates strongly from Dave Ramsey. And I really believe in the Dave Ramsey system of doing things without debt, because then you know, having a harvest is not a sure thing. Having that payment is always a sure thing after you take that payment, after you take that loan out. But what I found, and this was the big epiphany for me last year, was that once I found that system that fixed everything, I needed to invest in it. And it was not a large, it was a large investment for me, but it was a very small investment for a farmer, so to speak. It was, our one big drawback was our watering system, and I'd been fighting with it for 4 years, trying to figure out how to get water out of the canal onto our property. And in the end, the investment I had to make was about $1,700. And for a family that's making $35,000 a year, that's a huge investment. And especially since what we were watering wasn't going to give us a return. It wasn't fruit trees. It was just keeping our property alive and having some pasture and having our place look like it wasn't a dump. And so last year, I learned a little bit about business credit because of that, because I saw that if I'd waited until I could have paid for it with cash, all my trees would have been dead and I would have had to start over. And so do you feel like 100% never ever go into debt, or do you feel like there's effective small amounts of debt that like what I do, where it can be paid off very quickly once the system starts to pay for itself? Which do you feel like there's never a time when you should go into debt for this kind of thing?
Well, just the smaller amounts of debt, I think, are okay. Like for our tractor, which is essential for us here, because that's how we feed our cows and things like that. That one, we did take out a loan for, and we paid it off. So things that are essential, yes, I would agree that if you have to have them, not say a whole lot of debt, but, you know, a little bit is okay. And like you said, you're never guaranteed a paycheck, you know, on a farm, so, or the return. But the tractor is essential for us. And I had a thought just a second ago, but it's gone now. Oh, yes, here. Okay, now I remember. You know, when you first move onto your property, you're going to set things up how you think you want them, but they're going to evolve. Your property is going to evolve, and as you learn different techniques and different ways of doing things, you're going to be like, well, I wish I hadn't made that building permanent. I wish I would have put it on skids so I can move it to wherever I want to. So, you know, I think portable infrastructure to start out with is probably a very good idea until you really know where you want everything to be on your property. And if you know that you're not going to be staying on that property, investing in things that can be moved to another property is probably a very good idea. And doing, you know, research and learning everything you can is kind of key if you've never done it before and you don't really know what to expect from you know, farming or homesteading or whatever it is you want to call it. But and I think keeping organized, I do struggle with it a little bit, but I've got kind of my own routine down. I follow a routine every morning with everything, and that way I know everybody gets what they need, and then I go back and, you know, play with the animals, and really kind of it really helps to know your animals, because if one gets, you know, sick or is not feeling very well, you know that that animal's not feeling very well. Our meat goat out here, he skipped his breakfast yesterday morning, and that, that kind of set off a little bit of an alarm bell. So I gave him some probiotics, and this morning he's back at his normal happy little self and eating like a pig. So, just a lot of observation. There's a lot of observation in farming. You have to really kind of be on top of it. So,
well, but, and how do you, what? Go ahead. What?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, you're fine.
How do you feel about kids helping on the farm? Because for me, John took the girls camping for 3 days a couple weeks ago, and I just about died because they take care of all the little chores, and the experience of them being gone for that much time, and I still had work to do. I had my own work to do, but I was out there taking care of rabbits. I find that it's very difficult for me to leave the farm for extended periods of time, or not to have my whole family unit around me during the busy season. And I find that things like little day trips are a lot easier on me than like extended vacation types of things, because even if you have somebody come in to do your chores for you, like you said, they don't know your animals, and they don't know when somebody's off their feed, and they don't know the signs of labor in this particular goat. And so when you come home, you're thinking about it the whole time that you're gone. If you're a good farmer, you're thinking about it, and then you're stressed out about it. And I find that a lot of people are worried about homesteading or farming because of that. They're like, well, when could we take vacation? It's like, well, you really can't. Not extended vacation. And maybe not, I mean, maybe it's easier at certain types of the year, but I mean, in winter you'd think, well, there's no harvesting going on. It's not a big deal. I can leave. What if their water freezes and the neighbor who's coming to do chores didn't check, and then nobody has water? It is.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle, not just a job.
Right. We do the day trip thing. Like, we are kind of right in between Kansas City and St. Louis, and there's a lot of things you can do. Springfield's not that far away either for us. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. If we ever do a long trip, like last summer, my grandfather invited us to go out to the Frontier Days rodeo out in Cheyenne. Well, we went there, but I had to, for, a few months in advance, who was going to take care of what. And luckily I didn't have a milking animal at the time, of animal and milk at that time, which made it a lot easier. The husband is really not into the milking thing. So I have an automatic milker for my cow for that reason. He can do it. He just doesn't prefer to do it. He actually stayed back. He couldn't get out of his work, so he stayed back and took care of all the animals for that one. So I did, I was like, okay. I showed him how I did everything, and I know he's perfectly capable of doing it, but you have your own certain way of doing things, and it does really kind of you think about it, but everybody was fine when I got home. And everything was good, but that was the first vacation I'd taken in a long time. And we've got invited to a wedding in October, which I don't know if we'll be able to attend because it's in North Carolina. So, and that's quite a trip. So you have to think about, if you really like taking vacations, then you don't want to get the livestock that are going to require a lot of maintenance. If you're gonna have a dairy animal, you're going to be married to that dairy animal until they're dry, or either something like that. So you got to really kind of know what your time is going to be like, how much time you're going to have to devote to things that you want. If you have this grand idea of getting all these animals and you're going to have self-sustaining farm, but you don't have time to do it, you and your animals are going to suffer, and you're going to get burned out. You're going to hate it, and then you're not going to want to do it anymore. And that, to me, is a really, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's because it's such a great lifestyle. You know, it's hard, but it's very rewarding. And I'm ashamed that people, you know, go into it without, you know, researching it at least a little bit and knowing how much time it does take.
Well, and there's the other side that comes to the welfare of the animals, in that if you get into this and you get in over your head, the health of the animals will deteriorate, and you lose the training that you put into the animals, and then you can't sell them for the same amount that you put into them. And so if you're thinking you're getting these great registered animals that are going to make you all this money back, but then you're not giving them the quality of feed because you can't afford it, or you're not putting the time in to keep them well trained, you're not selling the same animal that you bought.
That's right.
And so staying small and getting the things you care about the most, and maybe even getting some training yourself. Maybe, I don't know, I think it's really valuable to have neighbors that you can switch chores with, and who can train you a little bit. That's what we do. And you need a network if you want to be able to have a break, and you also, yeah, and you have to keep the level of feed up, and there is some abuse, I think, sometimes that goes on with farm animals. It's so easy to happen. When I start to have animals die, I know I have too many, and it sounds horrible to say that, to be like, and then my animals start to die. But the thing is that if I don't have time to go double check that my kids did chores, and if I don't have time to go double check that the pen got closed because I have too many animals, then animals start to die, and that's when I need to start selling some animals for. And it's not a purposeful thing. It's just we hit that level again, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not only a time thing, you need to know your physical limitations too.
Yeah.
You know, mentally I could take care of more animals than I have, but physically I cannot. Your husband has had his back injury, and you know, he's been down for a while. I've had the same injury, almost the exact same injury to my back. It's the wrong way, I'm out for no less than 2 weeks. So I have to keep a level of animals where if my back goes out on me, my husband can step in, and it's not going to be a giant burden for him. It is a little bit, because he does have to get up earlier and then go to work, but I can have time to heal properly when that does happen. It hasn't happened in a long time, but it does happen occasionally, and you got to be able to have, like you said, a support system. We have really great neighbors that if I ever gave them a call in the middle of the night because I needed help calving or cow or something, they'd get out of bed at 1 a.m. and come help me. I know they would. So, and some of the neighbors down the road, they have dairy cows. I think this is their 3rd year having them. And the first year they got them, I got all kinds of questions, and I didn't mind. And the first time their cow calved, they called me, and they're, a little edgy. You're like, okay, is she doing okay? I was like, I'll be down there in a minute. And by the time I got down there, the calf was on the ground. So, yeah. It really helps if you reach out to your neighbors and build your own community around yourself. It's really kind of essential, in my opinion. My grandpa, he always talks about, he grew up in the Depression, and he said, if you didn't have a strong community, you didn't eat, and you didn't live very well at all. So.
Well, and I think back to what you were talking about with knowing your own limitations, is that so many people get onto their farm and they assume there's going to be all this abundant food. And a lot of us, if we're moms at home and kids are at school, or we're homeschooling, or whatever we're doing, there's somebody else at work to keep the farm running financially. And if we're not feeding ourselves and we're burning the candle at both ends, then we are going to actually permanently damage our health. If we're lifting things that hurt our back, if we're insisting that we do it this way because it's cheaper, that's when I really feel like it's the time to make a little bit of an investment. As long as you know that you're going to have a return, maybe have the investment be that you pay the neighborhood kid $20 to load and unload your hay if you don't have a loader. And that investment, yes, it costs you $20 more for that hay, but it takes the worry out of your mind and it takes the strain off your body, especially as we age, older farmers. There gets to be a point where you're permanently damaging your body. If you're using your hands as hammers, kind of metaphorically, using the wrong tool for the wrong job, then you're not going to be in it anymore. And for me, personally, I have to be finished with chores by 10 o'clock in the morning, and I don't go back out again during the day because I don't do well in heat, which means I get up earlier and I work for that 4 hours, get everything done, and then I'm done for the day. And it's my kids that run out and do the little checking on animals during the day. It keeps them from fighting and that kind of thing. And I work very, very, very hard during those 4 hours, but then I have to be in the cool basement working on something else. And so knowing your limitations and taking care of yourself physically, there's no replacement for good, vibrant health.
One other thing, you probably, I know it's hard sometimes, but you really need to set time aside for yourself to do something something away from the farm. Because if you don't, your mental health, you get kind of in a rut, and do something that you enjoy. Well, it's kind of a bad example, but I went up to see Doug and Stacy. I ended up doing the exact same thing I do here, but it was in a different environment. And to me, that was kind of a little mini vacation. I don't know. The whole spa thing and all that crap, I don't really care too much for. So that was kind of like a little mini vacation for me. So.
Well, and for me, I'm a bit of a shut-in. If I really don't like to be around large groups of people. And so for me, my little holiday from the farm is to come down and knit and spin and watch videos like that. This is my refresher. This is my soul replenishing activity, is to watch something like what we're doing right now and just sit and knit, because I'm sitting. I'm not up moving. I'm not up working. But I also don't have to try and figure out how to have a conversation with somebody that's not about farming, because I don't do that very well. I can talk for hours about farming, but you ask me about just about anything else, and my blood pressure goes up. I get jittery. I can't hold still in my chair. And so for me, and so I think everybody's reprieve is something different. There's like Natalie from Namaste Farms. Her thing is to buy designer shoes. She goes onto eBay, and her escape from farming is that when she's not actually out working with the sheep, she wears spike heels with 3 and 4 inch heels on them, and walks through the lawn and everything with them. And on her gravel driveway, she wears designer heels, and that is her escape from farm life.
Yeah, whatever works for you.
Yeah. So, okay, how are we? We got 3 more minutes. Is there anything else that is just, this is how you avoid farm burnout tips?
Everything I got jotted down, I've already talked about, I think. So
I would like to go back and talk about what you said when you first started, was that if you don't love, you have to love it.
Yeah, you have to.
It can't be a thing of, I'm afraid I'm going to starve, and so I think I should start a farm. There are different ways of supporting your family and having some self-reliance without farming. You know, backyard gardens are so prolific when you do it in a way that works with your own soil. You can, you don't have to do the farm thing. You can just stay in a backyard and have a few chickens and have a garden. I even kept my milk goats in my backyard when I lived in town. They were secret goats, but I still had them. And
You
something,
must have had quiet goats.
I bought those goats because they were so quiet. They had horrible milk, but they were quiet.
Oh, nothing worse than sour goat's milk.
Yeah, it was so bad. It was like skunk. So if you're worried about current affairs and you're worried about the state of the world, my better advice to people would be go get some food storage. Get food storage that fits in with your own diet. Don't get stuff that your family's allergic to or that they don't want to eat. Buy bulk, put it in 5-gallon buckets. When you're buying bulk, it's like buying feed in bulk. It's so much cheaper if you go buy it in the big paper bag and then dump it in a bucket to seal it. So if you don't love farming and you don't love animals, go get some food storage.
Yep.
It's just,
yeah, and you're right on that. If your family's not going to eat it whenever whenever there's nothing going on, they are not going to eat it when they're stressed out, and if there's some reason that you have to dip into your food storage or whatnot. So if they don't like it, they're not going to eat it, especially kids. So
yeah. Well, and it puts, for me, I know this sounds stupid, but I have a lot of chocolate in my food storage. And the reason is because I know my body, and I know that when I'm PMSing or I'm under a huge amount of strain and I'm working really, really hard and sweating a lot, that chocolate is like medicine for me. And so to say, oh, you shouldn't, the perfect diet is all that should be in your food storage, the things that'll keep you slim and trim and fast like a cheetah. No, slow and steady in survival situations is really, comfort food is important in survival situations, ease of preparation. And that's why we cook out of our food storage, is we keep it rotated and we eat out of it. And that way we're not putting stuff in storage that's going to be there for 30 years that we spent money on that never actually goes into our stomach. And anything that gets too old, we feed it to the pig or we feed it to the chickens as it starts to get old.
Nothing goes to waste when you have chickens. They'll eat everything. The only thing I found that they don't eat is onions. So
yeah, they don't eat onions or peppers. Mine don't like bell peppers.
Yeah. Mine don't eat the bell peppers either. But
my pigs won't eat them either.
No, they won't either. My comfort food in ours is jerky. I like jerky. I like just sitting there and being able to just chew on it, and because I don't like sweets all that much. But my kids do, so I do keep sweets in our storage. But I keep a lot of jerky because both me and my husband, we're not really sweet eaters, so we like the more of the hearty, like jerkies and different things like that. So
yeah. Oh, my mail lady likes. I think my mail lady just came and I forgot to take the mail out to her. Okay, so this is the end of Braid Girls. I'm sorry that I'm having to cut it off so quick, but my mail lady's here and I have all these packages. Thank you, Stephanie. Go check out JS Farms 2004. She has a great channel, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.